But listen, we're in a series entitled H2O, Hospitality Overflow. Now, hospitality, it just simply means in the scripture to welcome the stranger. To welcome the stranger. And we believe that hospitality overflows as we create environments. First, we have this environment happening on the inside of us, and then we create Acts 2 environments. Environments where they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to breaking of bread, where we're going to lean in today, and to prayer. So I've entitled the message today, Mi casa es tu casa. My house, your house. Let me pray first. Father, we thank you so much. Oh, Lord, what a gift. Let me just share this before I pray for us today. I came across, you know how sometimes on the internet or on social media, you'll have like these short little videos that'll pop up, like little motivational things. And this guy was asking these two, this younger guy and younger girl, he said, hey, if I gave you $1 million, would you be happy right now? They were like, of course. How about if I gave you $1 million? Would you be excited? I came to church, got $1 million. He said, what if I gave you 10 million? And you could just see their eyes like, that's not even real, man. Like, we can't even fathom that. He said, what if I gave you 10 million, but you couldn't wake up tomorrow? They said, well, we wouldn't take the 10 million. So he's like, you're telling me that you waking up today is worth more than you getting 10 million? And then he's like, well, so why are you so not excited about life? And that you just saw them like, whoa, like he just blew their mind. But I just think it's a gift that we get to be here together today. So we just thank God for that, Lord. We thank you that we're able to gather together and to worship. There's breath in our lungs, Lord. There's purpose that you have over our lives, Lord. And I know, and I just declare healing over bodies today. Healing over hearts and of minds, God, that, Lord, whatever, as Pastor James just declared so eloquently from your heart, God, that, Lord, those that came in heavy, Lord, your word says that there is a garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. So we thank you for the gift of life, Lord. And we don't say that as just a tantrum, religious, verbiage up to you, Lord. We thank you that, Lord, you breathe life into us physically and spiritually. And we just ask, God, that you would come, Holy Spirit, on this Pentecost Sunday. And even as you poured out your spirit on that day, on the early church, you ascended into heaven and the promise of the Father came. It was a fresh outpouring of your spirit. Changed the world forever. Changed our lives forever. But we look to you on this day and we love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, listen, it's not just a long weekend. This weekend is Memorial Weekend, and so we just want to take a moment to honor those that have sacrificed. I think it's interesting, this weekend it's Pentecost Sunday, which is, the Jews would celebrate Pentecost Sunday. It was the Feast of Weeks. It was the beginning of the harvest season for wheat. And how many of you guys know the harvest is still ripe? But the Bible says the laborers are few. And then it was also for the early church when God's Spirit was poured out. Jesus ascended into heaven after he rose. The promise of the Father, the Holy Spirit came, empowered the church, filled the church, and we are here because of that reality. And so I just think that this beautiful freedom that we look at this weekend, if we get to still live and breathe and do church because of men and women that have laid down their lives and sacrificed. So if you serve in our military armed forces, we just want to take a moment to honor you today. I don't know if Pastor James did that earlier, but I just wanted to take a moment to do it all over again, just to say thank you as we honor the people who have fallen for our freedom. We just want to take a moment and acknowledge that today. And it's a weekend of freedom, empowered by the Spirit, celebrating both practically and spiritually the freedoms that we have been given. And so we love you and we thank you in Jesus' name. So I think when we think about this idea of hospitality, we think about this. The tallest building in Los Angeles, in the Western Hemisphere, Intercontinental, downtown hotels, a sight to behold. It has 889 guest rooms. Come on, somebody. A 2,500 square foot presidential suite. Can anybody use that today? The Intercontinental offers an unparalleled level of comfort and convenience. Is it? I mean, it's a struggle is real. Now, let me just say this, is that I think a lot of times when we think about hospitality, we think about it on the receiving end. Like, we pay a great deal of money to experience good hospitality. Like, hospitality isn't just something that, people necessarily offer as much as we pay to make sure it's great. Hotels, vacation, resorts, all-inclusive, fresh linens, come on. How many of you guys go home from a hotel and you're like, man, I wish my bed felt like this. My pillows. Except the towels. The towels are always rough. And that just shows, maybe you're like, no, you just have not stayed in a fancy place. Well, the towels where we stay, they're hard. Like sandpaper sometimes, and you thank God for your towels on vacation. But we think about service, we think about good food, we think about entertaining to perfection. And can I just say that hospitality can include those things? But it's not the heart of biblical hospitality. Hospitality is so much more, a biblical hospitality is so much more than that. And can I just break your hearts today? It's not only to be received, it's to be given. Can I break your hearts a little bit further? It's not always convenient and it's not always comfortable. I know we would love that, but it's not reality. In fact, it was in the late 17th century, early 18th century, that we started to see a breakdown in culture in our Western hemisphere. It was this movement called the Enlightenment. And I don't have time to go into a whole sermon on the Enlightenment because it would be good. And we've done it last year, so you can go back and listen to that. But the Enlightenment movement, it affected America, it affected Europe, it affected everything that we know or call Western culture. And what it did was there was a shift in thinking. And it became all about the individual happiness, individual interest, individual precedence, rights, pleasure. Everything revolved around the interest of the individual. It's all about my joy. It's all about my status. It's all about my precedence. And it started to take on this role that people started to ignore tradition and family and community. It was all about the individual rights and fulfillment. And it's hurt us, to be honest with you, in so many ways. But let's just take one particular aspect that it's impacted us. And there's an epidemic that's a reality in our world today. And it's one that you may not think about often, but it's an epidemic of loneliness. Like 3 out of 5 people in America would express that they're lonely. 1 out of every 5 millennials would say they don't have a single friend. Now, in the UK, this has taken on a whole nother level. It's so bad in the UK that in 2018, they hired a minister for loneliness. That 75% of British people that live in the UK admit to not knowing the names of their neighbors. Like, it's become such an epidemic, it's now an economy. Like, if you want to have a little side hustle, you can join 620,000 people on rentafriend.com right now and make $20 to $50 an hour just to hang out with somebody. And strictly platonic. It's not like a weird website. It's more so just people that are lonely, like, hey, I'd love for you to go to the movies with me. Can we go to coffee? I love just to talk to another human being. $20 to $50 an hour. Some of you guys are like, what? It's real. They said that not only is it affecting us on an emotional level, but physically they said it's worse than not exercising. Loneliness is worse than not exercising. It's equivalent to alcoholism. It's 2 times as harmful as obesity. And the sad part is many of us don't even know how lonely we really are. And so I believe the gospel breaks through and into all of this. And this idea of hospitality can be such a refreshing reality to the world that you and I both currently live in and to ourselves. The gospel says something totally different about hospitality. Paul says in Romans chapter 12, verse 9 and 13, love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good, be devoted to one another in love, honor one another above yourselves. How you doing? You guys doing good so far? Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor. serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need, and practice hospitality. This word practice, it's a continuum in the Greek. It means to pursue hospitality. It's a continuum, a verb, an action word that says, let this be a rhythm of your life. Not just on Christmas and Thanksgiving, that this should be the reality and the rhythm of our life as followers of Jesus. And so when we look at the gospel says something totally different than just receiving hospitality. The gospel says this, that our life and our resources are not just for us to enjoy. It's not just for our individualistic joy, pleasure, happiness, and status. No, but rather God has given us life. God has given us resources to invest in others for their good, for God's glory, and for our maturity and growth. Yeah. Come on. It's true. And so the gospel kind of breaks through this whole individualistic reality and shatters it. And it's not just something that God is calling us to do, it's something that God demonstrated for us. I mean, we think about Jesus. Jesus did not treat his life or his glory or his wealth or his power as it was his own. Matter of fact, he emptied himself, taking on the form of the servant to serve us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son. And so in order to welcome us into his family, he gave of himself, all of himself, emptying himself of his glory, wealth, just said, I am taking on the form of a servant. Why? Because you are far away from me, and I want you to be close. You are far away from the Father, and I want to bring you in. And can I just tell you, the reality of the price that Jesus paid on the cross was far from convenient, and it was far from comfortable. It was super costly. Now, I think hospitality, somebody told me this morning, they said, you're hitting an idol. People say that in our culture, pastors say I get more resistance in the atmosphere when I preach about rest and serving other people. Because individualism has really penetrated us more than I think we realize. And I just don't think we understand hospitality. Hospitality comes from the Greek word, philoxenia, which philos means friendship, love, and xenos means a stranger. It's where you can get like the word xenophobe, or I'm afraid of people of other races or people who are different than me. And so it has this idea of friendship, love, or this welcoming of the stranger. Now, in ancient biblical culture, hospitality, it was important, but the Lord is about to take it to the next level. But let me give you the first level. In this ancient culture, it was dangerous to travel. Like you couldn't just jump on Southwest and head to LA. You couldn't just, get in a car and go. You couldn't just get on a bike and take off. It was tough. It was dangerous. Bandits were on the horizon all the time. People were afraid of being robbed. The terrain was difficult. Roads, there weren't just clearly paved paths like we so luxuriously enjoy. And as a result, there wasn't a lot of travel, so there wasn't a lot of hotels. There wasn't any hotels. There were some inns in certain cities. But they were very far and few in between because travel just wasn't popular. So hospitality really made it possible for people to travel. I would almost go to say it would be impossible to travel outside of hospitality, outside of you or a stranger opening up their home to you. And so we look at Mary and Joseph. You guys seen The Chosen? They're traveling to Bethlehem. Our Lord's about to be born, and they're looking for a place. The inn is full, and they can't find somebody that would take them in. And so you can just get a picture of the journey. Now, some of you guys might be thinking like, yeah, but this is the ancient culture. People are crazy today. Like to invite people into my house? People are weird, and they're crazy. Can I just tell you, they were weird and crazy then too. In fact, they had a code for hospitality in this ancient culture. It was invitation, screening, provision, and departure. And so the invitation would be this. If I was traveling, I'd come to the city gate, and I would wait for somebody to welcome me and invite me to come and stay. Maybe I would sit in the city square. We see this all throughout the Old Testament and New Testament. Acts chapter 19, Genesis chapter 19, where you would come to the city gate, and somebody would come and welcome you and invite you into their home. And then there would be the screening, because we don't know if you are an enemy. So before I let you in, let's talk a little bit. And a lot of times people would travel with credentials. They would travel with the recommendation of somebody that was known and respected, maybe in their city. There would be some accountability. So it wasn't just random, because enemies could come and they knew the culture of the day, and they could come and invade and do different things like that. So there were still checks and balances, which was healthy, but it was probably far less skeptical. They probably started off believing the best, not the worst all the time, depending on their experience. If they had a bad guess, maybe they got jaded. I don't know. But the reality is they had a screening, and then there was provision. And because the journey was so tough, you would prepare them not just some cup of noodles and Beanie Weenies. Shout out to Beanie Weenies. I grew up on Beanie Weenies. But you would prepare a feast for them. So it was costly. Wow. Like you weren't just to give them some, leftovers. It was, no, I'm going to prepare a feast for you, and I'm going to make sure you get ample rest, because the journey is tough. But then as the guest, I also had a responsibility, and there was a departure. And in this culture, they would stay majority of the time no longer than 2 days. That would, you hear people say, hey, don't overstay your welcome. Well, in this culture, it was about 2 days. And everybody said, amen. You're in a couple days, you're out, see ya. Because you wonder, how long are you going to be here? Tell me your journey. Are we good on the departure? And so that was kind of the deal. You'd give them some provision on their journey, and they would continue to travel. There was an invitation, there was a screening, there was provision, and then there was a departure. But when God made a covenant with Israel, he took hospitality to the next level. It wasn't just about 2 nights and a little bit of courtesy, little speedy travel, helping, the stranger just pass through. No, it was a little bit different. Deuteronomy chapter 10, it says, for the Lord your God is the God of gods and the Lord of lords. He is the great God, the mighty and awesome God, who shows no partiality and cannot be bribed. He ensures that orphans and widows receive justice. He shows love to the foreigners, which is the same word translated as stranger, living among you, and gives them food and clothing. So you too must show love to foreigners. Ready for this? For you yourselves were once foreigners in the land of Egypt. And so the Lord is saying there's a deeper basis for hospitality that I want to let you in on. See, hospitality was normally valued, just like I said, for speedy travel. It was courteous. It would make it possible for me to travel. But God says, no. Let's take this a little bit deeper. You were aliens in Egypt. Like you were weary wanderers, but I clothed you. I fed you. I brought you home. Not just for 2 nights. No, like I changed your world. It's no longer just for a couple of nights. No, the orphan and the widow, that's a long journey. That's a long welcoming. And so now the Lord is kind of getting us to the heart of hospitality. The Lord is saying that my salvation was hospitality to you. So hospitality for us should never be a law or an obligation. It should be an overflow. Hospitality overflow. In light of the fact that we are recipients of the greatest hospitality on the planet. Paul says it a little bit more clear. He says this, but now you have been united with Christ Jesus. Once you were far away from God, but now you have been brought near to him through the blood of Christ. And so because we have been saved by grace, we have been recipients of God's life-giving hospitality, not just physically of his provision, but spiritually. Not just physical provision, but spiritually. You were far away. You were strangers. You were wanderers. Now you've been brought close because of the costly blood of Christ. Now go and do the same. And when I say it like that, all of us are like, yes, amen, glory to God. But we so quickly forget. And that's why I think the writer of Hebrews says, don't forget to show hospitality to strangers. For by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without even knowing it. And so in other words, if we've been given the world's goods, the poor, the needy, both physically and spiritually, I just don't want you to think physically, I want you to think also spiritually. The poor and the needy are like weary travelers. They're like strangers, without money, without power, without connections, without resources. And God says, go and do the same. Just as I've done for you, go and do the same. And we see in Genesis chapter 18, Abraham welcomed the strangers, and little did he know he was entertaining the Lord and his messengers. We see the same thing in Luke chapter 24 on the road to Emmaus. Two discouraged disciples didn't think Jesus rose from the dead. They were super discouraged by the cross. Jesus shows up on the road. They're kept from recognizing him. They're having this little travel and this journey, and Jesus is unpacking the scriptures to them, and they're just blown away. So they say, come into our home. You got to stay with us. And they welcome him in, and it's at the table as they're breaking bread. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. As they broke the bread, their eyes were open. They had a revelation that it was Jesus before them, and their life totally changed. They went back to Jerusalem, back to their place of discouragement, back to do what? To plant the early church. God totally redirected their route from a moment at the table breaking bread. You never know what God is going to do at the table. The table has transformed and impacted history. Why? Is it the table? No, it's biblical hospitality. So let's talk about the history of biblical hospitality. And it's hard to talk about this without going back to the Roman Empire and the early church in Rome. Most scholars would say that the primary way that the gospel was spread was through hospitality. You say, well, what do you mean? Well, they went from a small little upper room where they would eat together in Jerusalem to over half of the Roman Empire in just 3 centuries, having a Christ influence and demolishing paganism. Not in its totality, but the church was so strong that Zeus was once the god of hospitality, and he became like obsolete. Nobody even was talking about Zeus. They were talking about the church. Huge impact on the Roman culture. And so when we go back and we look, it was interesting because they had no political power. They had no legal protection. They were under waves of persecution. Thousands were eaten alive in the arena during the games. They had no internet. They had no sound system. They had no printing press. They had no buildings, no stage. And the gospel spread like wildfire. How? From home to home, from table to table. And it changed the course of human history. Impacted Rome, all the way, not just at a ground level, but impacted the leadership of Rome as well, both in a good way, and then others were like, this is not good because they're getting way too much power. Wow. And so I just don't think we realize how much has been formed around the table of biblical hospitality. We get the word hospital, hospice, hostel, hotel. Where's the origin? Hospitality. And so when we go back in this ancient world, it was hard to get medication. It was hard, like I said, to get hotels because they were non-existent. It was hard to travel. It was dangerous. And so the early followers of Jesus picked up on this and they ran to the pain. They ran to the pain and they opened up their lives, their hearts, and their homes to the stranger. Even Rome, they're oppressed by Rome. And the Roman emperors were like, Julius was like, dude, they take care of our poor better than we do. Like, what are we going to do? They're gaining too much power. Like, this is not good. Like, paganism is, like, no one's going to the temple. They're all going to the church. They ran to the pain. Early church writer, Pleasanton, struggle is real. I'm not a good pronouncer, all right? But don't judge me. Let's go. Early church writer and preacher. He said, make for yourselves a guest chamber in your own house. You guys are not alive. That was supposed to be funny, come on in. You guys are second service. You got to sleep in a little bit. Come on. It says, make for yourselves a guest chamber in your own house. Set up a bed there. Set up a table there with a candlestick. Have a room to which Christ may come and say, this is Christ's cell. Not in like a prison, but this is his chamber. This building is set apart for him. Do you know that this was a common practice for 1,000 years? And almost every middle to upper class family that had a house had a room that was designated to Christ for the stranger. And then you take it a step further. The bishop of Caesarea, historians would consider that he planted the first hospital. The first hospital was birthed out of the church during a severe famine. And so both hospitality to the traveler and the hospital to the sick was a standard and normal operation of the church. So we look at this gentleman, Sky Jethani. He said, our homes are to be hospitals, refuges of healing, radiating the light of heaven. And our dinner tables are to be operating tables, the place where broken souls are made whole again. In our churches, people should find rest from their battle of performance and release from the lie that they are nothing more than the goods they possess. When we lower our defenses, when we remove our facades and begin to truly be present with one another, then the healing power of the gospel can begin its work. And so from the 14th century to the 15th century, as that era crept in, the Europeans began to take control over the hospitals. Then moving into the 19th century and the 20th century, welfare began, and then the federal government or governments at be became the orchestrator of aid, which was one of the downsides or declines of the church, which Emperor Julius said, hey, we have to figure out a way to get them away from influence. And so they just started providing as a government, the aid and the resource. So little by little, the church says we really don't need to be that anymore. And so you can see from the hospital to the hotel, things that we see all the time that we rely on started at the table. And so I'm just wondering if we could reimagine the possibilities that God has put before us. That maybe this epidemic of loneliness, we as the church have this incredible opportunity to step into this. And for those that are in need, both physically and spiritually, it's never been more prevalent in the Bay Area. Can I just say we have tons of opportunity. But there has to be a shift in our perspective and priorities. And this is tough because it's hard. It's hard in the home. It's hard in the church. Tables are getting smaller and smaller. Shout out to IKEA. Smaller and smaller. And it's hard. It's hard to get families around the dinner table because our lives are so chaotic. And even when our lives are not chaotic, our brains are still wired chaotically now, so we just don't feel like we have space. Even if we did have space, the thought of something else just feels like a burden. It's hard, not just in the family, it's hard to get our church together, just in small group settings. Like it can be a great challenge. People are working, some working 2 jobs, and the whole family dynamic and kids, we got to get there. I mean, it could just be a challenge all the way around, let alone welcoming the stranger. It's almost like, God, will you touch our hearts in a special way and help us? And can I just tell you, I am not pointing no fingers today. I got 3 pointing back at me. I'm like, we have a lot of work to do, church. But the good news is everybody's starting to see the importance of homes. In fact, the prices have increased 30%. From 2020 to 2022, they've climbed 30%. It's like everybody's awakened to this reality that homes matter. They matter. Except it's been harder to get a home than it's been for generations. And if you have a home, thank God for it. If you don't have a home, thank God for it. But I think it's more than an opportunity for those of us that don't own homes to just exercise contentment. My dream home is out of reach, because some of you guys have homes, but it's not your dream home. You're like, man, if I could only get this. But what if we just didn't exercise contentment? But what if this reality for us in the Bay Area, especially, right? People are leaving the Bay Area to buy a home. Like, I'm going here, why? To buy a house. It's awesome. Going here, why? Buy a house. It's great. Where is that? I don't know. It's just cheap. You'll be back. But what if it's an opportunity for us as followers of Jesus to get our eyes back on the man that had no place to lay his head? And rather than just practicing contentment, what if this in the Bay Area for us, all this chaos, like 1,000 square feet, 900,000, and that's like the starting price. Like, what if it was an opportunity for us to reimagine what the home was truly for? Wow. We have a couple in our church that they just got a new house and they got a lot more square footage. And I was like, man, how does this space feel? And instantly, without hesitation, he's like, man, it's great, but I want it to be filled with people. Like, our house is for the church. It's to build the kingdom. And I've watched them live this out. In fact, they wanted a 4-bedroom just so they can have a room for the orphan. They're in the foster care process right now. They want a guest room for people to come and to stay. But their cry was this. The hard part is nobody wants to come over. It's just hard to get people together. And they're not weird people. They're great people. You know what I mean? Like, I can imagine like, well, let's talk about that for a little bit. No, they're amazing people, super hospitable, all that good stuff. But it's just like, man, people's schedules. And it's just so hard to get people together. And we just have a lot of work to do. But I think the work is different than we think. I love what Julie said from Christianity Today magazine. She said the best home, the ones that feel the most like home, are almost never the biggest, prettiest, cleanest, or most well-organized. They are those that seem to envelop you upon crossing the threshold with signs of real, actual life. I remember, yeah, you can clap for that. That's awesome. It's like a little golf clap. Let's go. I remember going to my friend Carlos's house when I was young, and they had a formal living room. You walk into the living room, you walk into the door, carpets are white, couches have plastic on them. You don't touch anything in that room. You take off your shoes, and you walk super fast to the living room. Nobody does life in this room. It looks great, but there's no life there. There's no real life happening. It's awesome. Everybody's like, "Wow, man, that's a nice couch underneath the plastic. That's great. This carpet is awesome. Nobody ever walks on it. It's beautiful." And maybe, like, the adults could have, like, a cup of coffee in there. Maybe. But we're like this. We walk through the door. What's going on, man? Get to the living room. We can eat. We can drink. We can do life together. We can hang out. Sit on the couch, and it's okay. People want to be where there's life. And so hospitality, a lot of times when we think about it, we think of the formal living room, and it exhausts us. Oh, I got to do another thing. It's another moment. Can I be honest with you guys? So my daughter this last week had some friends coming over, just a couple friends, and I found out last minute. It was a study day for me, so, you know, I didn't have the best attitude. And it was kind of a moment where, yeah, I had a bad. I'm like, what? There was no communication. What's going on? Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, we gotta make sure everything is right. And almost to the point where my daughter was like, hey, Dad, if it's gonna be too much, like, we just won't do it. And I was so convicted by that. I repented to her. I said, no, our home is open. Our home, no, like, this is a good thing. I'm just mad at Mom because she didn't tell me. That's what it really was. That's what it really was. But she swears she told me. Pastor problems. You don't think we have issues in our marriage? Think again. And so we think that it's this thing that's going to exhaust us. But I love what I heard one theologian, one scholar say it like this, that hospitality in the kingdom has sacramental qualities. Meaning just like the sacraments, water for baptism, bread and wine, or we use apple juice for communion. They're uncommon stuff. They're super simple stuff. Yet when dedicated to God, when used by God, they become a vehicle for God's power and grace coming into our lives. And I just sense like the Lord saying, man, like we just overthink stuff sometimes. Like if you have China and a filet mignon, that's cool if you can do that. It'll make people feel special, but it's not necessary. Like PB&J can go the distance. Put a little toothpick in there. They'll think you're like amazing. Cut it in half, put a toothpick. You're good. Keep it simple. Can I just tell you how many times Pastor Jackie's came home this year and said, man, God met us at a table around some coffee. And this person left freed. God ministered just at a Starbucks or Pete's or Rhythm Coffee, whatever your choice is, and just sit down over a simple water and some beans, grind it up. And the power of God meets us in that space and impacts people's lives. My life was radically impacted in a living room, in the middle of a living room that had a fold-out chair that had a little crook in it. You know what I mean? So you can you're trying to keep yourself from being stable. And God met me in that space, and it's become an altar for my testimony. And so hospitality, listen, is it less than entertaining? No, that's cool. If you have filet mignon in China, use it for the glory of God. There's nothing wrong with that. If you love to do that, do it. But don't miss the heart. It's not simply to entertain. The home, listen, it's so much more than that. And some of you right now, you're like, well, I don't even have a home. That's fine. Home is whatever your life and space consists of. Invite people into that space. So let me land the plane, which is going to be a long landing. It's going to be a long landing. But let me give our hospitality some handles, right? Because there's a difference between entertaining and hospitality. I think entertaining, again, hospitality is not less than entertaining, but it's more. So entertaining predominantly is around the inner circle. It's your friends, it's your family, it's the people that are close to you, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think it should start at home. But I think for many of us, that's where it stops. It's comfortable, it's safe, we trust, but hospitality looks at the outer circle. Like, who's on the fringes? Where is it uncomfortable? I remember when Jackie and I first started hosting international students. Remember the first time this young man came through our door, and it was, there was a language barrier. We've never had anybody else in our house that was a complete stranger. And it was almost like we're trying to figure each other out. Like, hi, how are you? Welcome to my home. Are you going to kill us? Are we good? You know what I mean? And then, listen, Lynn, like 3 weeks in, hey, what's up, Danny? Hey, man, do you take the toothpaste? It just becomes normal life. But sometimes we don't make that step to the outer circle. And hospitality says, not just the inners, it's the outer. And then entertainment's more around performance and pressure. Sometimes our hospitality is not for them, it's for us. Got to make sure everything is dialed in. And I'm guilty of this, right? Make sure it's dialed in, make sure it smells good, make sure all the 5 senses. What are they going to taste? What are they going to smell? That's what we teach our small group leaders, right? What are they going to feel? What are they going to... And all that is good with the right heart. I'm going to go in, I'm going to light the candle in the bathroom, put this, Christian book, #1 bestseller on the toilet so everybody knows we are spiritual. Performance where hospitality says, man, how can we best serve those that are coming? Like, what's going to add the most value? How can we be Christ to them? Now, what are they going to taste? What are they going to, smell? What are they going to touch? What are they going to, so it's with that heart of service. Entertainment says, what can I get? What can I get out of you? How can I leverage this? Hospitality says, what can I give? What can I give? This is kind of says the same thing, but I think it paints a different picture. Entertainment can be to move up the ladder. Hey, make sure you invite the prominent people. Might be some more opportunity. Help me move up the ladder a little bit. Hospitality, Jesus said, hey, we're going to take something of the day and we're going to radically transform it. And we're going to use that as a way to move down the ladder. So much so, Jesus said it like this. Jesus said, when you give a party or a luncheon or a dinner, meaning he's expecting us to do this. He didn't say if you do, if you decide to do, if you have the bandwidth. No, he says when you do, don't invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back so you will be repaid. Now, Jesus is using what's called hyperbole here. He's exaggerating this top point to really nail in the bottom point. He's not saying, don't invite your friends and family over ever. So you guys, don't go home and call like, Mom and Dad, you're never coming over. Don't do that. Some of you are like, that would be a gift. Just kidding. And so he says, but when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteousness, eternal perspective. We're headed home. You see how we're headed home, eternal perspective, everything that we've been preaching over the last couple of weeks is coming together. You got to have that focus in mind. You got to have that focus. So 1 Peter says it this way. So in all of this, and all the things that I just told you today, Peter's going to land the plane. Continue to show deep love for each other, for love covers a multitude of sins, using hospitality one to another without murmuring. Isn't it interesting? We always quote that first part, right? For love covers a multitude of sins. But then we never finish the passage. How do I do that? Using hospitality to that person? Yep. By using hospitality one to another without grumbling. It should never be a burden, even though it's costly. Because we know and we are simply exuding hospitality. It's an overflow of what we have already received in Christ. John Piper says it this way. The command to be hospitable is not a command to do something. It's not just a command that can be legalistically fulfilled with the quota of guests. It's a command to be a certain type of person, a certain kind of person, namely the kind that doesn't resent having to be hospitable, the kind of person who doesn't look at the extra dishes and bedding and bother and grumble. And so I think the hardest thing for us, ladies and gentlemen, in light of all of this, all of us would, I think, if we're in a healthy place and our hearts are in tune with the Holy Spirit, we would say, yes, this is important. This is important. But I think the hardest thing is for us creating space for this. That's the challenging part. Because we're tired. We're stretched. Like, how do I told Jackie last night, I'm like, dude, we're terrible neighbors. Like, I'm serious. We have great conversations outside, but it's not that we never want to invite. We're like, hey, you can come in or whatever, but we're just not intentional, even with our neighbors, of saying, hey, why don't you come over for a cup of coffee? You know why? You know why I would say no? Because I don't have time. But I'm telling you, go reach your neighbors. Why I enjoy my coffee by myself. It's not okay. Like I said, I'm not preaching at you, I'm preaching with you. So let me give us some practical things as we go. So just practical things. Number one, invite people into your space. Invite people into your home. Invite people out to coffee. Invite people into your spiritual home. Invite people to church. And then you can say, hey, after church, man, come with me. I'll pick you up, and then I'll take you out to lunch. It's costly. Man, we'll spend some time together. Invite them to a small group. Invite them to a worship service. And then let's go eat together. I think we need to eat together more often. It's simple. But I'm going to tell you what. Sometimes after the service, after the sermon, when you go out to eat at lunch and I hear the conversation that came back, I was like, man, that was probably more meaningful than your time with us. A lot of times we want it formal. Give me an event. Give me a conference. How about just a meal? Where there's no agenda. Agendas make us feel comfortable. Because we can keep it surface and shallow. One of the things I've realized about me, I'm terrible at small talk. I love meaningful conversation. And I used to just think I get nervous, but I'm like, no, hey, how are you? Tell me about your life. Do you know what I'm saying? Then that's my lane. That's my zone. It's not that I can't and I won't have, and I don't think it's important to have small talk. It's just like, I can't wait to get to the goods. I want to know where you're at, what's happening in your heart, what is God speaking in your soul. That's where I want to live. So, but that comes out as we eat together often. It's risky though, because you're inviting people and they could say no. Olivia, yesterday, we were at Walmart. We're parked, waiting for Jackie to pick up some stuff. And there was a guy next to us, and Olivia said, Dad, I think the Lord wants you to, I sense the Lord telling you to preach the gospel to that man. I was like, girl, he's not telling me, he's telling you. Seriously. So she's like, no, like you. I said, no, I'm not talking to him. You roll down your window, and you tell him what God has put in your heart. And I just watched her suffer in the back seat, like. And the guy's sitting like, we're parked here, and he's sitting in his car, he's on the phone. You could just tell he's in the thick of it. Big old fat Mustang, just doing life and business. And she's just like, oh, it's quiet. And then finally, I just hear the window roll down. She says, excuse me, sir. The Lord put you in my heart. I need you to know that God knows you. He loves you. He's got purpose for you. Wow. And the guy's like, what? And you could just see, like, oh, his world stopped. And I was like, way to go, baby. Good job. Right? That's awesome. But it's pricey because she had to get outside of herself. And she had to step into that space. And so just simple ways. You can host a small group. Small groups can be a lid, though, too, because there's, again, a vehicle to Christ-centered community. We don't want you just going to your small group and relying on that. We want that to be a vehicle for you to build lasting Christ-centered friendships. It's like, go out to lunch, go out to dinner, get some coffee together, have each other over. Just join our serve team. Help us get comfortable greeting the stranger every week. The whole idea of our serve team is that what starts here would overflow into your everyday life. You just get comfortable. It just becomes normal. Like, oh, I'll talk to strangers all day about the gospel, about Jesus. Welcome them in, because I do it all day. I do it every week at church or every other week, because we don't want you to burn out. Sit one, serve one. Let's go. Generosity, giving of yourself. We're constantly giving to people in need. And you can use opportunities of generosity. A lady came up and UPS, she said, I can't do it, I can't send it, I don't have the money. And I was like, I'll pay for you. She looked at me, and then the guy got convicted. He's like, no, I'll just take it for you, man. I was like, yeah, like it's just moments of generosity. Extending hospitality, serve days, you can jump on missions. You know, when we greet people, you know, hey, stand up and tell somebody, slap somebody a high five. You know, in the early church, why they would do that? They would speak peace over one another, say, I used to be a stranger, but I'm not anymore, and I don't want you to feel like a stranger. Glad you're here. Totally different than how we see stuff today, right? So there's a way you can foster, there's so many different ways, and I don't have time to list them, but what I will help us to understand is the motivation. Hebrews chapter 13. So also Jesus suffered and died outside the city gates to make his people holy by means of his own blood. So let us go out to him outside the camp and bear the disgrace that he bore. Eternal perspective, you ready for this world is not our permanent home. We are looking forward to a home yet to come. Jesus, listen, as a foreigner, as a stranger would stand outside of the gates to wait for somebody to invite him in, Jesus died outside of the gates so all of us could come in. And now it's like, as we have experienced his hospitality, let us go outside of the gate. Yes. Let us go with him and do what he's called us to do. Rosaria Butterfield says this: those who live radically ordinary hospitality see their homes not as theirs, but as God's gift to use for the furtherance of his kingdom. They open their doors, seek out the underprivileged. They know that the gospel comes with a house key. Woo. Will you stand to your feet? Let me pray for you. Lord, I thank you that you have given us just such a clear demonstration of your hospitality to us. You're both our provider physically and made a way for us spiritually to come home. I just pray, God, that you would convict us in such a great way. Holy Spirit, it says that your job is to convict the world concerning sin and righteousness. And I just pray, Lord, that as we look at your word, that Lord, that we can't turn a deaf ear to this reality. And I know it's not popular. Who's preaching about hospitality today? I don't know. But I know this is a sign of maturity for a believer. This is what turned the Roman Empire right side up. This is a manifestation, a spiritual discipline of the gospel made evident in our lives with a heart of gratitude as we open our doors in our lives to those who are far from you, that they might know you. And that's both locally and abroad. And so, Lord, I just ask that you give us a heart for this, a faith and an obedience, God, that you would help us to prioritize to create space for people, for one another, and for the stranger. Show us, Lord, how to reprioritize our life, how to create space. Help us to think about this the right way. And I just ask that you would do the work, Holy Spirit.